What? We're doing a Disney episode. Leave my hat alone. When I was in college, I signed myself up for an 8 a.m. philosophy class because I hated myself and didn't realize I didn't have to wake up that early if I didn't want to. The class was the bane of my existence until the teacher did a lesson on Toy Story. Let's have an animated discussion. Disclaimer before we get started, I am feeling a little under the weather. I had a competition that required me to spend 2 weeks with a cat. I will not be explaining further, but just know I am allergic to cats, and so I will be congested for most of this moment. I appreciate my adoring fans for dealing with me in this difficult time. Woody is the top toy in the box until Buzz is brought into the fold during Andy's birthday. Now, Woody is concerned with not being Andy's favorite toy, and Buzz has to figure out a way to get back to Space Command as he is the only one with the weakness to Zurg's weapon of mass destruction. This movie stars Tom Hanks, Tim Allen, Don Rickles, and was written by Joss Whedon, Andrew Stanton, and Joel Cohen, and was directed by a person we don't need to talk about. Asking me to have a quick opinion about Toy Story is like asking me to explain why Wingstop is my favorite food spot. It won't be quick, and frankly, I'd rather just be eating Wingstop and watching Toy Story. But since I love you, my adoring audience, so much, I will start by saying that there is very little anyone could ever say that would make me hate Toy Story. The story is impactful, deep, and absolutely changed the tide of animation and filmmaking as we know it. Toy Story is to CG animation what Snow White was to 2D animation. No one knew whether it could be done as a full length movie, and if it could it be done well? They didn't know if they could make the movie more than a childish film that adults would hate taking their kids to. In the 20th anniversary documentary, they talk about how their first version of this movie was so bad that Disney told Pixar the team had to move from Emeryville, California, which is near Oakland in NorCal, back to Burbank, which is near LA in SoCal, to be supervised for this movie. He who shall not be named asked Disney to give them 2 weeks to redo the beginning of the movie, and if it was done correctly, Disney could let them stay up north. Disney agreed. Pixar worked their butt off, and they succeeded. Andrew Stanton said it best. He was quoted, "We were young and naive, and when people told us it was too juvenile, we believed them. It wasn't as if they were wrong, but our solution for it was wrong." Basically, because everyone was so worried about the movie being too juvenile, they really ramped up the adult aspects of the movie instead of just making what they wanted to make. This in turn made the movie rude, crude, and straight up just not good. After they were given the 2 week grace period, they reverted to what they wanted to do in the first place. And it was loved so much that they got the permission to keep going. Now, something that's very important to keep in mind here is these people were in their 20s, late 20s, early 30s, just starting. For some people, this was their first film ever. And then for everyone, it was their first CGI film. So this was the definition of uncharted waters. You have to remember that this is a Pixar movie, the first Pixar movie. The first movie of any studio will always set the precedent and the tone for what people will expect that studio to do thereafter. You've seen it with Snow White and Disney, the Minions and Illumination, and probably the best movie debut of any animated studio, The Prince of Egypt from DreamWorks. Okay, technically Ants was the first DreamWorks film. However, Prince of Egypt was the first movie made in-house, and they were both released within 2 months of each other in 1988. I think Ants was in October, and Prince of Egypt was December. So I still count it. And then finally, you have Pixar with Toy Story. And you can see it. You can see the personalities of these movies still permeate the studios today. Disney will always go back to a princess or a fairy tale when they want to get back to their roots or feel like they've kind of lost their way. Illumination is always going to have a goofy, silly movie. You think of Life of Pets, if you think of Minions. I think the only studio that's pretty eclectic is DreamWorks, where you have the range of Shrek to Prince of Egypt to How to Train Your Dragon to Home. Each one kind of has its own personality. And then there's that meme going around about Pixar for a while. What if toys had feelings? What if superheroes had feelings? What if feelings had feelings? Pixar is known for digging deeper to the root of issues through inanimate objects or godlike beings. And that's a beautiful legacy to have been started by a bunch of toys. And that's why the pressure was so big for Toy Story to do well. Not only was it the first for the studio, but it was also the first CG movie. That's a risk. But what was Disney if not a risk taking enterprise? Not so much anymore. But I think that's also why they had Pixar kind of started, just in case it didn't go well. They had a backup plan. Pixar did an amazing job setting the precedent for what to expect from their movies and handling the pressure of The founding father of animated movies being like, "Hey, do this thing and do it right." That's a lot to take on, especially for a whole bunch of people who are under 40. There are some 40-year-olds, and they're like, it's still impressive for 40-year-olds. But what I'm saying is, everything about this was new. Everything about this was young. Everything about this was unexplored territory, a new studio, a new medium, a new group of fresh faced people with wide eyed optimism. Everything was new. We have to take that into consideration when we see this movie. I had a kid recently say, this movie doesn't look finished. That's fair. It doesn't look finished in a lot of ways because of how far animation has come in CGI, but it's come that far because of Toy Story, because we had a little drawstring puppet and an action figure who thought he could fly, all create magic. Guys, Toy Story is, oh, you caught me on a good day. If you have the pleasure of knowing me in person, congratulations. And also, I'm sorry because you have probably heard me on random with no context or prior explanation quote the whole first interaction between Sid and Hannah verbatim. Do I know why it stuck with me all these years? No. But I can't meet a Hannah without quoting it until Hannah starts screaming and Sid claims his innocence. And it's such a random intro. It's like, Hannah! Hey, Hannah! What? Did my package come in the mail? I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? I don't know. Oh no, Hannah, look! What? It's Janie! She's sick! No, she's not! I have to do one of her operations! I can keep going, but I feel like I've already gone too long. Anyways, this movie has had a lock on my psyche for the longest time. I was 4 when it came out. I'm 34. This movie's 30 years old. When I rewatched it for this video, I did not realize just how much of the movie I knew. I almost quoted the whole thing verbatim and not just the Sid and Hannah scene. In my opinion, it's a perfect trilogy. And I say that knowing Lord of the Rings is right over there. And that's hard to do because, first of all, I love Lord of the Rings. I do a director's cut marathon every year, and everyone has to bring a Hobbit meal. It's my favorite holiday, best day of the year. You also have to take into account, though, that technically the Lord of the Rings is based off of one book. So it's a standalone that gets turned into a trilogy, where Toy Story is just a straight up trilogy. I will be ignoring movie 4 and the upcoming movie 5. If you guys want me to do a review on it, let me know. I'll consider it. I've never watched the 4th one because it was such a perfect trilogy. Why do they have to ruin it? I will admit the trailer for Toy Story 5 does look compelling, so I might watch it. Whatever. Anyways, how do you make 3 amazing movies without a sophomore slump and keep going to a perfect ending for the 3rd movie? I have friends who still won't go to movies with me because we saw the 3rd movie together and I was sobbing like a baby. Like a baby. Just wah, wah. It was crazy. It also was my childhood. And I'm not good at goodbyes. And that was such a beautiful goodbye. But in order to have a good trilogy, you have to have a good first movie, and Toy Story does this so well. The characters are fleshed out, the jokes vary in maturity level and in subtlety to keep the adults engaged while the children are in wonder. The storytelling is easy for kids to understand while mature enough for adults to see themselves in the moment. Who hasn't had everything they thought life was going to be drastically change their lives at one point? This movie is so complex in the sense that it's able to hook children and adults in a very mature way, and that's something that can't be understated. It has to be recognized. It's very very well done. Everything mentioned above is so hard to do. We've seen subliminal messages that Disney's gotten in trouble for with the phallic symbol on Ariel's castle, with the word sex in the dust in Lion King. Honestly, the dust one feels like a reach, but there's always been some game of hiding raunchy jokes in kids' TVs. Cartoon Network and Nick were notorious for this with shows like Dexter's Lab, Rocko's Modern Life, Cat Dog, Johnny Bravo, and sometimes they weren't even subtle at all. Toy Story did this in a way that was tasteful. And look, if you know me, you know I love a raunchy joke. But sometimes I like the understated and it's more fun to spot. And I think Toy Story did a great job with that. One thing I love about Toy Story is that it can stand the test of time. What do you do when everything you know gets challenged? When you know your role in life, but then it gets pulled from under you. You think you know who you're going to be, and then you find out you have no idea. Woody and Buzz are both going through the exact same struggle in completely different ways. Woody is the leader of toys, ready to fix and take care of anything they need. In some ways, you can call him the Space Ranger of Andy's bedroom. Buzz is the only one with the secret to stop evil Emperor Zurg and needs to fix his ship so he can go back to space to save the world. In some ways, he's the sheriff of space. Are you guys catching what I'm saying? I see I see some similarities here. Now, obviously, one is more delusional than the other. Woody knows exactly who he is and who he's been this whole time, while Buzz has a great imagination. But either way, everything they know about themselves and each other is completely tossed out the window. They are both law enforcement in their respective worlds and operate as such. And I honestly think they hate each other so much in the beginning because they can see so much of each other in themselves. Have you ever had someone that you just don't like, and then your friend's like, that's because you act just like them, or you see the worst part of yourself or a part of yourself in them? That's a real thing. I think Pixar does a really good job of pushing this and showcasing these are both two very strong leader type men who one doesn't get challenged till later. Both of them feel challenged with this new dynamic. Everything is changing for both of them in very similar and yet completely different ways. Now, for the philosophy of it all, my teacher was obsessed with Nietzsche, probably because we went to a Christian university and he talked a lot about God being dead. That can send a sheltered young adult into a spiral. And some Christian teachers got a kick out of challenging faith without giving us any answers to questions they gave us. But there was one teacher who was gentle with rocking our world and used Toy Story to explain. Buzz was a real life space ranger who was responsible for saving the entire galaxy. He would refuse to hear otherwise until the truth was literally staring him in the face or out that window that he could not reach. Everything he knew about himself was wrong. He was, in his eyes, nothing. Couldn't even fly out the window. The hat looked good. Tell me the hat looked good. The apron was a bit much. Listen, I will rewatch this movie and probably order Wingstop after my allergies go away. Anyways, everything he knew about himself was wrong. Woody was no longer Andy's number one toy. Not only that, but he had lost the admiration and love of everyone who thought he had tried to kill Buzz. Awkward. He also was reduced to nothing. This leads to the philosophy of existentialism, the idea that someone exists before they are purpose filled. You can figure out what you want your purpose to be, but the fact that you exist is the most important thing. That's the thing that matters. And that's what this movie goes to. That's the root of what this movie is, finding strength in the fact that you exist as opposed to your purpose. There is a strength in that. Again, as I mentioned earlier, I went to a Christian university. I grew up very religious and very sheltered. There's something very dangerous about believing you are here for a sole purpose. There there is a danger in that because the thought of being here for a sole purpose means that everything you do is shaped because you believe this one thing, and you tend to lose a lot of yourself in that, at least from the Christian standpoint. I do believe that people are on earth for a reason. I do believe that people get to meet people or have kismet moments for reasons, but it's important that it's enough that you exist. It's important that it's enough that you are here. And sometimes people feel like we need this grand cosmic reason. There has to be this beautiful reason that I am on earth. I have to make this difference. I have to make a change. Maybe, but also, maybe it's just enough that you're you. And who you are is funny or engaging or smart or unique. And I think people struggle with that. I think if they're not the strongest or the fastest or the smartest, they feel like there's no reason for them to be here. Maybe it's enough that you are just you and you like random things. You like Wingstop and Toy Story. Maybe all that matters is that you get to be here. I know life sucks and we want to find a reason for all of it. Maybe sometimes it's better that there's no reason and we just get to decide on our own. I think in looking for answers, sometimes, especially if you were born religious, you tend to forget that you are a complete answer. And that's something that I really struggled with. And that's why I really appreciate Toy Story. I appreciate this thought of like Buzz having to let go of this idea that he is never going to save the Galactic Alliance. But he gets to be loved by this really cool kid. And he gets to have a best friend. And it's okay that that's enough. Sometimes that's all we need. I think that's beautiful. And I know sometimes as humans we feel like toys for or playthings for giant cosmos, or maybe we're in the Matrix, or maybe this or maybe that, and all of those seem very likely because the world sucks right now. But I like the idea of like, instead of us thinking of ourselves as toys, maybe we could just think of ourselves at recess all the time and do the best we can to try to play as often as we can. Because life is so short, and spending it trying to get ahead with a job that's never going to appreciate you anyway, and that will keep you from the people you love, won't be worth it. 9 to 5s, don't get me wrong, 9 to 5s are important. I think I'm just tired of like waiting for something amazing when me making it and being alive is amazing. There's a beauty in finding contentment in who you are and where you are in life. And it's not always easy. And sometimes you have to squint really, really hard to find something you like. But when you're able to, it is a beautiful thing. And I think Toy Story really showcases that. Overall, I give this movie 4.8 out of 5 stars. It did the impossible. It was a trailblazer and did it all with no precedent to follow, unless you count Snow White, which was released in 1937, so almost exactly 60 years prior. Let me know what you think in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe. As always, I hope you have an amazing day. And my question of the episode: if you could be any inanimate object, what would you be? I think I'd like to be a slinky or a lava lamp. I think I'd like to be a lava lamp. I just feel like lava lamps, places you find lava lamps are either really cool or really sketchy, but either way, it's an adventure. Nope, I want to be a VW bug. I think I'd want to be a bug because those are a road trip car for sure, and I love road trips. That's my final answer, VW bug. Let me know what you guys would say in the comments. Hope you have an amazing day and see you later.